Subscribe and click the notification bell to stay updated with the latest videos from School of Technology, Management and Engineering and MIMS Indore.
We will now begin with a session on competitive coding with C++, where our session experts for today, Ms. Prisha Sharma and Mr. Suyash Kaur, students from BTech, Computer Science and Business System, third year STME NMIMS Indore. The prerequisites are shared in the chat box, which you have to open in your browser during the session. Hope you all enjoy the session. Over to you, Prisha and Suyash.
Thank you so much, Janvi. So, hello everybody. We are present here for the session today. I am Prisha Sharma.
And I am Suyash Kaul. We will be taking this session on the topic competitive coding with C++.
So, by not taking up any more time, let's dive straight into it. How about we start asking a simple question from all of you friends? That is, are you all already into competitive coding? To answer this, we would like you to please open minty.com on your browser and use the code visible on your screen. The poll is open for 1 minute. All right. So we have quite a few responses already. Okay. We'll open the poll for another few seconds. Great. All right, guys, we are now closing the polls. Great. So yes, you see 91% of us are new to it and want to be pro at it. And 9% of us already have hands over it.
True. In today's session, we have a lot of things already in our bag. We have something for everyone. Each of us at the end of the session will be a few steps ahead in the line of competitive coding. Before we take up topics in depth, let us first have an overview of what all topics we will be discussing today.
Today's session will be based on few FAQs, which are what, why, which, and how.
That is, what is competitive coding? Why should we do competitive coding? Where do we do competitive coding?
And what language should we use? How to practice and hone our skills? We'll also be telling you about some basics which should be known before starting with competitive coding. We'll conduct a few doubt clearing sessions as well in between. So everyone is requested to note down their doubts and post them in the chat box when asked. We'll have them solved.
Saving the best bite for the last, we'll be conducting a small contest in the end of the session wherein every contestant will get a chance to win an exciting prize. So hold on to your seats and stick until the end.
Let us start with the first question. What is competitive coding? Entering the world of coding makes us realize that we learn not just how to code, but the art of thinking. By breaking our codes into smaller parts and using our logic-based creativity to solve the problem with multiple possible solutions. Therefore, we can say that it is a mental sport when this sport is held over the internet involving coder as a contestant, then it is called competitive coding.
In short, competitive coding is a race. No, guys, it's not a virus. Relax.
All right, talking about it more specifically, like in any other competition, competitive coding also has a few rules, restrictions, and constraints. So basically, the participants need to write the code in such a manner that it has less execution time, takes up less memory space, the program size must be less, and the quality of the output should be good. Based on these factors, the winner is declared.
But Prisha, the question that arises is, why should we do competitive coding?
In a single sentence, we can say that to prepare a programmer such that his or her logical ability increases, he or she is able to write the code for his challenging problems. I know it sounds very idealistic when said out loud, but let us understand how can we achieve this. While we practice it, we inculcate the habit of thinking faster. It improves our knowledge about programming language of our choice, helps us understand the time and space complexity of any given code, about which we'll be talking in a few moments. And lastly, learn the art of problem solving. Another benefit we can say that is, it helps having an edge for big company interviews like FANG, that is, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, and other worldwide companies like NVIDIA, Yahoo, Microsoft, PayPal. But how do we practice it? What are the steps to be followed? How to get better at it? So yes, do you have any idea about all these questions answers?
These are a few FAQs which people have been asking. The answer for all these questions is a very simple one. All you need to do is follow these steps. Choose a programming language, understand the concept of time and space complexity, learn the fundamentals of data structure and algorithms, take the challenge and solve coding problems, practice and do it regularly. If you can do this, then you'll see your progress with every question you solve. Once we decide on to getting ourselves involved in competitive coding, what language should one choose?
Don't you think before we get on to the answer for this question, we should ask our friends about their opinion as well?
I think that will be great. So, what do you guys think? Which language should we use for competitive coding? There is a poll at menti.com and the code is the same as you can see over your screens. Everyone has 1 minute to put in their polls.
All right. So we have few polls already. The current stats tells us that we have 72% as C, C++, 71 now, which is ranking the highest as of now. Okay. We have Python coming up, Java in the lead. All right, few more seconds, and then we'll close up with the polls. All right, we are closing with the polls now. So as you can see that 57% of us think C, C++ is a better language, 14% as Java, 27% as Python, and 2% of us as any other language. So what's the answer?
Although we can use any language because our major focus should be towards learning the ability of solving problems. So language is not a barrier. We can start with any language we like or would want to learn more about. But if there still remains a doubt, we should prefer C++. This is because of a simple reason that in this competition we code and we compile and this loop continues till we reach our desired output. Therefore, we programmers generally use a language over which we have more control over and is faster than other languages. This is why C++ is used majorly.
Today in this session, we'll be using C++ language only. Let us now talk about practicing it. Where can we do that? Many websites across the globe help us with that. Few of them are HackerRank, CodeChef, CodeForces, HackerEarth.
I think we all now understand the importance of competitive coding, but is there anything that we should know before starting it? Are there any prerequisites, Prisha?
Yes, there are a few pointers which are better to be known and understood before we start. They are basic input-output, operators and data types, control statements, arrays, algorithms, space-time complexity, and lastly STL, that is Standard Template Library. This list might look long and scary, but trust us, it is not. To help you all with this, we'll be discussing and understanding each one of them individually.
First up, we have the basic input output. Well, it is nothing but the way in which we get an input and present an output. As you can see, it is of two types, the interactive console and the text input output. Let us now understand them one by one. What is interactive console? It is the control unit responsible for taking input from the users and presenting the output at the same place. What is interactive console used for? IDEs that we use, that is the integrated development environment, for example Visual Studio Code, Eclipse, NetBeans, etc. In the command prompt, use interactive console for input and output. I think we must look at it practically.
Alright, let us start up with some basic code of the same. You all guys can see the GitHub over your screens. The link for the same is also provided to you. So you guys can also code along with us. Okay, we shall first understand what is the interactive console. Alright.
Here on your screen, you can see that we are taking input for two variables, that is A and B, and the output will be shown on the same screen. Let us now run the code. So the input for A is 45 and for B is 5. Here you can see that we are giving the inputs on the same screen and the output on the same screen too. This explains the interactive console.
Alright. Hope the simple program help you guys. Now, let us understand the text input output. The difference here is that we take the input from one place and present the output at another. The place where we take up our input is the stdin, that is standard input stream. The place where we take our output is stdout, that is the standard output stream. And there is a screen for showing the errors as well, that is the stderr, where we see the errors. In competitive coding, we usually prefer text IO. Now we shall go and check few examples for understanding the text IO. All right, just beneath it, we have the text input output program as well. In this method, we'll be choosing the option text input output, wherein we'll put the input inside the text IO box only, and after all the inputs have been given, the outputs will be shown. As you can see here, we are selecting the standard input type to text IO, which was previously set to interactive console that we used before. Here in this box, we'll provide the input. We are providing the values of A and B as 45 and 5 respectively. Now let us try and run the code. As you can see, the difference here is all the inputs are being given all together at the same time in the stdin box, and the output is also being shown collectively but on a different screen. The text IO will also be separate output box for errors. For example, let us try to run the code with the try and catch blocks. So here we'll try to put in the values of A and B as 45 and 0, and this will generate an exception as numbers are not divisible by 0 that we know. Let us see what will happen. So here in the stderr box, we see an error that says cannot divide by 0. That is an exception. So this is how we explain the three different types of boxes that we have in TextIO.
Next, we have the data types. A data type specifies the type of data that a variable can store. There are three types of data types: primitive, that is primary, derived, and user-defined. Let us have a closer look into primitive data types first. Primitive data types are built-in or predefined data types that can be used directly by the user to declare variables. It can be integer, character, boolean, floating point, double floating point, etc. Let us see this with the help of an example.
Okay. Next up, we have the data types code. We copy it from here and we go over our online compiler and try to run the code. All right, we haven't selected the interactive console.
In this code, we see that there are 5 data types, that is integer, floating point, double floating point, character, and boolean. The syntax for the same has been written respectively. Note that when using floating point, we need to write f after the number to tell the compiler that the number is a floating point.
Next is the derived data types. As the name suggests, these data types are derived from the built-in data types. It includes arrays, pointers, functions, reference, and many more. And lastly, we have the user-defined data types. These are the data types that are defined by the user. These include structures, classes, typedef, etc. As we'll move ahead and dive in a bit deeper, we'll realize that we should have the knowledge about these data types as to match and fulfill the constraints given in the problem. Here, to give you all a glimpse of the same, we have an example. As you can see on your screens, we have two constraints for variable t and nk. Let us take a few minutes and understand which option is correct among the both. These both options tell us the way of declaring them. We can have a few seconds to understand, and then you guys can put in your polls over menti.com, and the code is given over here on the screen. We'll also be putting it in the chat box. Manjari Menti. All right, we have few of the polls already. As of now, 51% of us suggests it's option A, and it's still moving. 49% as option B. We'll wait for a few more seconds for all of you guys to put in your polls. All right, we'll now be closing the polls. So as you can see, option B is correct.
Why is that? That's because in option A, the value of variable n and k required is more than the range of the unsigned integer, therefore taken as unsigned long. Also, We here are using unsigned because the value of t and nk will never be negative as per the constraints given.
Operators. An operator is a symbol that tells compiler to perform specific mathematical or logical operations. They are of the following types: arithmetic, assignment, relational, logical, bitwise, and others. You will find more details about the same in our resources section over GitHub.
What are control statements? As the name suggests, they control the flow of the program while execution. They are the elements in the source code. They are divided into three categories: selection statement, iteration statement, jump statement.
Let us understand them one by one. Selection statement. It provides a means to conditionally execute section of code, or we can also call it the decision-making statement. Selection statements include if-else and switch case. We hope you remember it. If not, then you don't have to worry. You will find about it more in our resources section over GitHub.
Prisha, there are a few questions which we want to understand. Is it true that we can use if, else, and switch case alternatively?
Well, yes, there are times when we can use them alternatively, but not always. If else can evaluate almost any data type, be it integer, character, boolean, floating point, etc. Whereas in switch case, we can only evaluate an integer or a character.
Oh, I see. So, when and where exactly should we use if, else, and switch?
Whenever we are working over a single variable whose equality is to be checked, and if there are more than 5 conditions, then we should use the switch case, else we can use the if-else statement. A small tip here. Since in this competition the execution time matters, so when we use switch case at such times, it is faster. So it's better than using if-else.
Next, we will be talking about the iteration statements. An iteration or looping is a sequence of one or more statements that are repeatedly executed until a condition is satisfied. For statement, while statement, and do while statement are its types. All looping statements repeat a set of statements as long as a specified condition is true. The specified condition is referred as a loop control. Most of the times we use the for loop. If you are not aware about it and wish to see its working, then you may take a look at it from the resources we uploaded on GitHub.
Lastly, we'll talk about the jump statements. These statements are used to interrupt the normal flow of the program. It includes continue and break. Let us understand these through an example. So everybody is requested to go over GitHub where you'll find the code for the same. We go over control statement where we want to go to jump statements. And here is the syntax for your understanding. And when you scroll down, you'll find the example. We'll copy the code and paste it over the online compiler here. When the compiler finds continue statement inside the loop, compiler will skip the following statement in the loop and resume the loop. And when compiler finds the break statement, compiler will abort the loop and continue to execute statements followed by the loop, just like here. We have run the program. Here we are trying to print the counting from 1 to 10. But what happens here? In the loop, when the value of I turns 4, we asked it to continue it. So here you can see it skips the value of 4 and prints nothing. And when the value of I turns 8, we ask it to break. So it aborts the loop and comes out of a loop and finally stops printing after 7.
Next, we will be talking about arrays. Arrays are derived data types which store a collection of similar data at contiguous memory level locations under the same variable name. Let's understand the dimensions of array with an example. Suppose that we need to store marks of a student in a test of 2 different subjects. So instead of initializing 2 different variables, we can simply initialize an array of marks of the student. It will look something like this when stored. Next is 2D array. Now, what if we have more than one test score of a student to be saved? So instead of creating multiple 1D arrays, we can create a 2D array. Here you can see we have 3 subjects and 2 test scores. It will look something like this when stored.
Finally, the 3D array. What if there are multiple students whose multiple test scores of multiple subjects are to be stored? For this again, we can either create multiple 2D arrays or a single 3D array. Here you can see we have marks of 2 students, Prisha and Suyash, for 3 different tests, for 3 different subjects. It will look something like this when stored. Let us now see a practical example for array. Here on the GitHub, we go to the arrays section. We have some explanation here. When we scroll down, we have a quick example for you all. Here, we have initialized an array of size 5 and we are trying to give the values of 0th index as 5 and second index as -10. So let us run the array and run the program and see what the array does. Clearly, we have an error here because we are trying to access values which we haven't given the input. All right. So let us try to comment this part and just try to access the values we have given. All right. All right, we have the values here as we have given the input, that is 5 and -10. This is the simple working of 1D array.
After learning this far, we shall have a quick doubt clearing session. Everyone is requested to drop their doubts in the chat box to Ashi Patni. We will be taking a few of them here for everyone. Rest which will be left would be answered personally in the chat itself. Alright, so we have got a few questions. Why do we prefer text input output? This is our first question. So, the answer to this is in competitive programming, it is important to read input as fast as possible so we can save as much time as possible. Since it is a competition and it's a race, like I said, you have to be very fast. That's why we prefer text input output.
All right. Few of them we'll be answering in the chat itself. We'll just take up one more question. We'll wait for a few more seconds to get your questions. Okay, so one very interesting question. The question says that how many dimensions an array can have? Well, to be honest, theoretically, there is no limit. The only practical limit are the memory size and the compilers. So whatever memory size you have, that is the limit. But theoretically, you can create as many dimensions as you want for an array. Friends, you can keep putting your questions in the chat box. We'll be side by side replying to them as well. But as of now, we are continuing with the session.
All right. Finally, after talking so much about the space and time complexity, we will now discuss about it in depth. I guess by now we all have a little bit of idea of what we are talking about. Prisha, to be honest, I feel it isn't as difficult as it is hyped, don't you think?
Well, yes, I do agree. How much space, that is memory used by a program, that is simply called the space complexity. How much time a program takes to execute, this is the time complexity. These are the measures of the efficiency of a program, for which we use a notation, that is the O notation, which depends on the number of lines to be executed. Let us take up an example to show you the usage of the space and time complexity. So here we go to the space and time complexity. Currently, we have two set of codes, one of which is commented. We'll go to it in a bit moments. First, let us try the part which is this. So here we have the count variable, which is initialized to 0, and a for loop. And we are trying to understand the time complexity taken by this for loop. So the time complexity is exactly the number of times the for loop will run. So the count variable here will tell us how many times the for loop has run. So let us try and run the code. So the number of times the loop has run is 50. That is n, which is the value we put here in the loop. So simply it's order of n. So the time complexity for a for loop is order of n. Now let us understand this with a nested for loop. Here we again have the count variable, but here we have a for loop inside a for loop, and then we count the total number of times these for loop will run. So let us try. It says 2500, which is exactly the square of 50. So we can say here simply that the order here for this for loop is order of n square. So the time complexity is order of n square. I hope this was clear and understood by all of you.
Now, you know the practical basis of space-time complexity too. Let's test ourselves if we know and have understood the concept or not. Here you see two pieces of code, that is code 1 and code 2. All you have to do is go through them and tell which of them has a better time complexity. To answer this question, we can use the code visible over your screens at menti.com. We all have 1 minute to answer the same.
The code has also been dropped in the chat box. We have already received a few answers, which says currently code 2 is in lead, which is code 2 is the correct answer. Let's see. We'll have the votings open for a few more seconds. All right. We'll be closing the votes now.
We can see that many of our friends have understood the concept very well. If not, then don't worry, we'll help you out. In code 1, there is a nested for loop which will exponentially multiply the number of times the code inside it will have to run, and so will be the time. Meanwhile, on the other hand, code 2 will have to run two for loops separately, which is why it will take way lesser time than code 1. That is why the correct answer is code 2. A small tip here, when doing competitive coding, we focus more towards having less execution time, that is, towards solving the time and space complexity, even if at some point we have to sacrifice the space complexity a little bit. This will be clearer when we learn about algorithms with some examples.
We code to solve a particular type of problem. For solving these problems, we build and follow some particular steps which helps us. This flow of steps is nothing but an instruction manual called algorithm for the given problem. So, a program is in short a running algorithm. The efficiency measures we talked about previously is generally called the order of an algorithm. There can be multiple ways of solving one problem, and in this competition of coding, we first think of an algorithm for the given problem and then code accordingly.
But before we start to code, we should build a habit of asking these questions. Can the currently developed algorithm, with its time-space complexity, pass the time memory limit given for a particular problem?
Sometimes there are more than one way to attack a problem. However, some of them may be incorrect and some of them are not fast enough. So, the solution to this is that brainstorm as many possible algorithms, then pick the simplest that works, which is fast enough to pass the time and memory limit. Some common algorithms that are used for searching and sorting elements are bubble sort, quick sort, selection sort, binary search, linear search, etc. Let's help ourselves understand the whole song that we sung with some practical examples. We won't be going into details of how we'll code it, but rather understand the algorithm behind it.
First up, we have bubble sort. It is very generally used sorting algorithm. It is based on the idea of repeatedly comparing pairs of adjacent elements and swap their positions if they exist in the wrong order. In other words, the bigger element will bubble towards the end, and the smaller element will bubble towards the beginning until all elements are in correct order.
Another method that we have is the quick sort. It is one of the divide and conquer algorithm. As we can see that we have list of elements. These are further divided into two parts. Then again, these parts are individually divided into two parts, and this goes on till we reach single separate elements. These are then regrouped again in a sorted manner. Like here, 27 comes first, then 38. Similarly, when such regrouping is done, they are again further regrouped accordingly. Well, Suyash, these are two different ways of just sorting the elements. As we can clearly see that the bubble sort is much easier to implement than quick sort, then why is there a need to have another algorithm?
Yes, it is very much true, Prisha, that bubble sort is easier to implement than quick sort. Then again, as the name suggests, quick sort. This algo is much faster and more stable than other sorting algorithms. If you want to see the code implementation for these sorting algorithms, then you may visit our GitHub resources.
Let us now understand one of the very important topics needed in competitive coding, that is standard template library in C++. This is because we understand data structures and algorithms are very important, but when it comes to coding them, it gets very exhausting. The length of the code also increases and therefore takes up a lot of time.
To overcome this, we have the STL, in which we have everything already done for us. Yes, all of it already coded. All we need to do is include them in our code. STL is a set of predefined template classes available for us.
Don't you think that you just said that all we need to do is include them in our code? But how do we do that? I think it will be better if you give us all some examples to understand this.
Sure, as we have already seen the working of sorting algorithm, let me demonstrate to you how it could be done using STL as well.
So here we have the STL section, and here we have a small program. We'll go to the online compiler and try to run it. What we have done here is that we have declared an empty vector v and pushed back some of the elements, let's say 50, 35, 90, and so on. And simply we are trying to print the elements. Instead of giving the size, we have used a function v.size which tells us and returns the value of the size of the vector. So here you can see the elements are 50, 35, 90, 19, 22, 88, and 12. Now let us try to understand few of more methods that we have in vectors. As you can see here, we have the function for printing the first element, the last elements. We can also insert values at any given place. Let us try to run this. Let us simply add this to our code. What we are doing here is we are trying to insert value 5 at the beginning by using the begin function and add a place which is 3 times more the index of the begin element. And similarly, we are trying to put in many values here. So as we can see here, we have inserted the values that we wanted at the given positions. And then we can also have the vector to sort the elements. We can have the vector to reverse the elements stored in the vector, and so on.
You all can visit the GitHub resources that we will be providing you with. So if you want to experiment a little more about them.
These templates are composed of 3 parts. Containers. These could be thought of like buckets which stores data. Iterators. These help in finding and locating the data. Algorithms. As we have already learned about them, these are applied methods over the containers, that is, the data with the help of iterators.
There are many containers. Few of them are vectors, arrays, stack and queue, and maps. Let us try understanding few of them and see how they are used.
As we already talked about the vectors used, so you can go with GitHub and understand them. So we just saw the working. We shall now understand it more theoretically. First up, we have the definition, that is, vectors are the same as dynamic arrays, but with the ability to resize themselves automatically when an element is inserted or deleted.
Like you said, it is too theoretical to understand. Let's go through this word by word, shall we? Vectors are the same as dynamic arrays. Before we understand this, let me first tell you what is a dynamic array. It is quite similar to a regular array, but the only difference is that the size is modifiable during program runtime. So we can say that vectors are equal to dynamic arrays.
With the ability to resize themselves automatically when an element is inserted or deleted. Now, this part of the definition has the answer to what is the main purpose of using vectors if arrays can serve the purpose of dynamic allocation of memory. The vectors are able to resize themselves when the elements are added to it. Along with this, as vectors are part of STL as we saw, it is only fair to know that these are some predefined methods that we can use directly.
I hope the definition is clear now. Let us now uh, let us now look at our next topic, that is stack. Stack is what it sounds to be, a pile. It is a pile of data in which data is pushed, that is added, and popped, that is removed from it. Whatever is pushed first gets popped first. We access the last element entered in the stack, which is called last in, first out.
Next, we have queue. Similar to stack, queue also is exactly what it sounds to be. Queue is just a queue of data. We enqueue the data, that is add the data to queue. We dequeue data, that is remove the data from it. Whichever data is added first in the queue is accessed first, which is called first in, first out. Both stack and queue can be implemented using arrays and vectors, whichever we are more comfortable using. You all must be having some queries now. Let us have another quick doubt clearing session. Everyone is requested to drop their doubts in the chat box of Ashi Party. We'll be taking few of them here and rest will be answered personally in the chat itself.
So we have our first doubt. What are the uses of stack and queue? So the use of stack and queue is that we can use a stack when you want to get things out in the reverse order, then you put them uh, in the way in which you put them. And queue is used when you want to get things out in the order that you put them in.
Also, we can say that stack can be used to implement recursive solutions, that is, which happens until a condition is fulfilled, right? So queues and opposite to that, queues are useful when we need the ordering of data, which is more important, right? So stacks can be implemented when we need the recursive solutions, queues when we need the ordering of data.
We also have another question. Why do we use try and catch block in our code? Well, it's not necessary to use them. You can just get some errors if you want and check the stderr box and you'll get the errors there too. It is not necessary to use try and catch block there.
But since we wanted you guys to understand it in more better way, we thought of putting the try-catch block. One more question that we have is, since vectors are like dynamic arrays, are there 2D vectors too?
Yeah, of course. There are 2D vectors and 3D vectors too. Everything that is possible for us to do with arrays is also possible with vectors. But vectors provide with more things than an array does, like we explained. All right, so thank you all. Those are very interesting questions. I hope we solved your doubts. If there are any remaining ones, we'll solve them on chat. Finally, since most of our concepts are clearer, let us now try some questions on HackerRank. For that, let's start with making an account over HackerRank. So here, HackerRank. Let us first start with sign up and code. We'll have to give our first name and last name, the email address, and the password, whatever we want. So I'll put in the password for this. All right, so we have successfully signed up. Now the step one for here is I'm here to learn and compete with others. I'm a student and I will graduate in 2023. So this is the dashboard. Here you'll have to go over explore skills, select algorithms, and you'll find questions. Let us start with the first one. This one is a simple array sum.
We'll be here waiting for you guys to make the account as well. We'll be waiting for a few seconds. And if you need more help in creating an account, we have the required information and images over GitHub at the resources section.
All right. So in this question, what we have been given is we have been given an array of integers and we have to find the sum of its elements. So here is an example that there is an array with the name AR and it has 1, 2, 3 as its elements. So the sum of 1, 2, 3 should be 6. So our function should return 6. Here are the constraints. The n should not be less than 0 and the value in the arrays cannot be greater than 1000. It can be equal but not greater than 1000. So let's try coding it. We will be taking a variable I for running the loops and a variable sum to return the value for the function as it is of integer type. Now let us run this loop. This loop will run until the size of the vector. So we have used the size function of the vectors. All right. So this is the condition for our loop. Now we have to print the sum. So what we will do is we will add the elements in the integer sum. All right. So in this piece of code, we will get the values of sum stored for the sum of the whole vector. Next, what we have to do is return the variable sum. So when this function is called and executed, this function will return a value of sum. Now let's try running this code. All right, this test case was successfully run by us. The expected output was 31 and we have our output 31. Now let's submit the code. All right, all our test cases have been working and our code was successfully submitted.
Now, what we can do is, instead of using the loop here, we can directly use a function, that is accumulate, as a part of STL. So what we'll do here is, we'll write accumulate and pass the parameters, that is the vector dot begin, that is the first element, starting from the first element, then other parameter, that is vector, which is ar dot end, that is the last element, and 0. As you can see, we want the sum of the elements starting from 0 added to 0, so the last parameter will be 0. So let's see if it works. So the test case have passed. Now we'll try to submit the code. So all the 3 test cases are passed again. So I hope you understand the importance of STL. Instead of putting so many lines of code, which is the loop, we just added one sentence, that is accumulate function, and our work was done. Let us now try to understand one more question. Let us say the birthday cake candles. Here in this, the question says that, let us directly jump to the example. So we have the constraints here, which is okay. So the question says that they'll input the number of candles and the height of the candles. So we had 4 candles and each of the candles has the respective heights, that is 3, 2, 1 and 3. The question demands the number of candles which are of the highest height. So here we have 3 and 3, which is highest in the height and are 2 in number. So the output is 2. So let us try to code for the same. Here we have the given function. Let us suppose we first of all want the maximum height of the number of candles that we get as an input. So we'll declare a max variable which will return the maximum element of the vector. So the parameters that we pass in the maximum element is candles.begin, that is from the starting of the vector to the end of the vector, that is candles.end. That is it. So this function will return the maximum element in the variable max. After that, we'll try to run a loop wherein we'll try to find out how many of these maximum elements can be found. So I will be less than candles.size, that is the size of the vector. Then we'll put an if condition in which if the current element is equal to the max, that is the height of the maximum candle, then we'll increase the count of the count variable, which will be having the number of candles, else it will run the loop. And lastly, we'll return the count variable. Now let us try to run the code. So here we see the expected output was 2 and our output is also 2. Let us now submit the code. And all of the test cases have passed. So I hope this quick glance of how to solve questions and practice is clear to everyone.
All right, at last, finally, we are up and ready for the contest planned for you guys. On your screen, the link for the contest will be given to you on the chat box, and the same is dropped in the chat box. Those who are not there, we are sharing the invite link with you now, and you are requested to join for the updates. The contest will be live 15 minutes after the end of the session. We will be dropping a message 5 minutes prior over WhatsApp as a reminder before starting the contest. Thank you. We hope the session was helpful for all.
Surely. So I'll just sum it up for you guys. The link for the contest is over your screens, dropped in the chat box. Along with that, we'll be reminding you guys 5 minutes prior we start the contest, and that is over WhatsApp group. So all of you guys who haven't joined the WhatsApp yet, we are sharing the invite link in the chat box. Please join so you get the reminder before we start the contest. So I hope the session was good enough and informative. We are signing off for now. Over to you, Janvi.
Thank you, Prisha and Suyash. That was a wonderful session. Hope you all enjoyed learning about competitive coding. So now I would like to invite our student coordinator, Ms. Sejal Gupta, to announce the result of tic-tac-toe quiz we had before the session.
Thank you, Janvi. Hello, everyone. It was indeed an insightful session, Prisha and Suyash. We were thrilled by looking at the response of tic-tac-toe, the technical and aptitude quiz. It was a neck-to-neck competition, but as the saying goes, a second is enough to make a big change. And I guess that's what happened today in this quiz, as we literally had to go through the time of submission to decide the winners. Without further ado, I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of Sunday Tech Series team to announce the results. The winner is Akriti Jain and has won the cash prize of rupees 500. The runner-up is Gurspersh Kaur and has won the cash prize of rupees 300. Congratulations to the winners. You will receive the certificates after the session, and our team will contact you for further communication of prize money. I now request our tech team to kindly allow the winners to switch on their camera so we can just take a quick picture. Are we ready? Okay, we are done. Thank you.
Congratulations, both of you, Akriti and Gurspersh. Welcome, Gurspersh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
What do you do, Gurspersh?
Sir, I am currently pursuing BTech from CBS IPU. I am in pre-final year of my BTech.
Okay, congratulations. Money doesn't really matter. It's the award which matters. Our team will be in contact with you and we'll come back to you on it.
Congratulations to the winners and thank you, Sejal. There will be another webinar on GUI Green Programming with Java by Ms. Ayushi Sarda and Ms. Anushka Jain, students of STME NMIMS Indore on 28 June 2021. The registration link for the webinar has been shared with you in the chat box. Hoping for your active participation in our future webinars as well. Moving towards the end, I would like to thank our director, Dr. Prachi Gharpure, for providing us with the opportunity, Associate Dean STME and convener of this webinar, Dr. Akhil Banglowala, faculty team of Sunday Tech Series for their constant guidance, and the organizing team for making it possible. Once again, I would like to inform you all that you will be receiving the e-certificates within 3 to 4 working days on the basis of submission of feedback forms only. The link for the feedback form will be sent in the chat box. Thank you and hope to see you all in the contest.